So what I'll do, I'll just log in. So this is pretty much what a school would see when they log in. This is my sort of dummy platform just for running demos and so on. Stop these calls coming through. So I'll come back on to what the school sees in a second. So I always like to start off with what the student experience is.
Yeah.
Because that's the critical part of it. If the student doesn't engage, then obviously it doesn't work. So I'll just show you what that looks like. And I've got myself set up as a student as well, just to give you an idea. So I'll just send myself a check-in email. So the student receives an email to the school email address. There's also an app that's been launched this week. So if they were using the app, they'd get a notification.
Okay.
And then what the student does, they just click on that email and it looks just like this. And they just click the link to check in. Or if they were on the app, they would just go straight into the app. And the screens look very similar on the app to what they do on the internet, so to speak. So there's 3 questions for the student. They have got a Welsh option if you've got any Welsh first language students. Okay. So the first question is always, how are you feeling today? So it's just the main overarching emotion. So on this screen, they can select one. So for example, I'll say I'm feeling motivated today. And then when they click next, it then asks them, why are you feeling motivated, as in the emotion that I selected. So this would pull through any emotion that they selected on question 1. And on this screen, then they can select as many emotional drivers as they want. So for example, I'll say relationship, sport and sleep as an example. Okay. And then next, and then question 3 is the only open-ended part of this. This is the standard question that Skodel puts in, which is there anything you'd like your teacher to know about that they currently don't? Okay. That question can be tailored by the school for any group of students at any point in time. Just so you're, and I'll come back onto that in a second. So I'll put as an example. So the student can put anything they want in there. And this question is really where we get some real good insights. And then done. Okay, so in terms of the student checking in, that's it. So there's 3 questions. And because it's so quick and simple, and it's got the emoticons that they use on social media and so on, the engagement levels are normally pretty high. When the student checks in, they're then presented with their own personalised dashboard. So this Skodel isn't just about getting the information to the schools for the schools to act upon. It's also there for helping the student understand their own well-being, understand what drives their emotions, and helping them become, develop their own resilience in terms of mental well-being. So they can then look back at how they were feeling over any period of time as they start checking in. Bless you.
Sorry.
That's all right. It then starts building up a picture for that individual about the main things that make them feel good, the main things that make them feel bad. And there's also well-being wisdom area for the students, which has got articles, activities, videos and so on to watch. And then there's also the ability here for the student to check in off their own backs. So they don't, if something happened and they wanted to check in, then they wouldn't have to wait for an email or a notification. And if that does happen, it's quite rare and it sticks out like a sore thumb, because the check-ins the school sends are normally once a week, so it's regular. So if a student takes it upon themselves to check in, then it's normally something the school needs to be aware of. So the teacher will get a notification that somebody's checked in. So you can go and have a look at it. But if they do check in out of hours, there's also hints, directing them to Childline, for example, NHS Direct. And if you as a school had other things that you directed and used for your pupils, you can put that in there as well.
Right, okay. So when you said the personal dashboard, you said it helps them to understand their emotions, helps them to understand or sort of what were the three things you were saying? So
it's designed to help the student understand their own well-being.
Yeah.
So helping them to understand what drives their emotions over any period of time.
Okay.
And really, it's there to help develop their own mental resilience.
Yeah. Right.
You know, rather than put, and this part was actually, when Skodel was built, this part was never part of the plan.
Right.
But when schools started using it and the students started engaging with it, the students started going to their teachers and saying, well, we want to see how, we want to check in on ourselves.
Yeah.
We want to understand ourselves, which was really brilliant.
Yeah.
And so that's where the student dashboard came from. And it will look exactly the same on the app. So they'll be able to go into the app at any point and just check in on themselves and understand how they're feeling. It's sort of, you know, having gratitude when you're feeling good, and then understanding what makes you feel bad and what the triggers are.
Yeah.
So it's quite a useful platform. So that's the student experience, as I said. So if I go back onto the school platform, I'll just show you what this looks like. I'll just refresh. So you see that one that I've just completed is already there. So it's real-time information. As soon as this check-in happens, it goes onto the school dashboard.
Okay.
So let me just walk you through this one first of all. So at the top, it scores the student, or scores the school on their well-being. So it measures the positive emotions, the negative emotions, and then sort of discounts the neutral ones. And everything you're seeing on these screens now, you can look at the whole school. You can look at any particular groups that you wish to set up, and you can look at individual students. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So on the right hand side there, you've got all your most recent check-ins. Obviously, there's quite a lot to go through one by one. But what I really like about this side is the filters. So if you wanted to hone in on, right, who's feeling worried, then it brings all of those up. And then who's feeling worried about exams.
Okay.
So then you can filter in on particular emotions and particular emotional drivers. Right. That's important at any point in time. And you can, like I said, you can measure that then over all time, over a custom period of time, the last week, the last 3 days. So any time scale that you want to measure these emotions on or just hone in on, you can do that really easily.
Okay.
Okay. And then moving along here on the analysis page. So as you start sending check-ins, it obviously starts giving you headline numbers in terms of how many check-ins have been sent, completed, comments left, and so on. But what's really good on here is you can then start measuring positivity amongst the student group.
Okay.
So this, for example, if you're looking at the whole school, this would show you the whole school. But what you then can do is compare any groups against each other or against the whole school.
Yeah.
So you can easily pinpoint how the school is generally feeling at any point in time, and then check in on individual groups against that to see if there's any discrepancies, and then start understanding why, because then you can delve into those groups, have a look at their emotions, and so on. So it's brilliant for sort of measure. There's not much. I think that's the tricky part with wellbeing, is how do you measure it? There's lots of support there to develop wellbeing and so on, but measuring it is such a difficult thing, and that's where that's what Skodel was really developed for from a school perspective.
Yeah.
Similar to the students, it starts you helping you understand what are the main positive key drivers for our students and what are the main negative key drivers for our students. And then you can look at all of those. The recent check-ins, which is where you can look at a particular check-in. So the one that I've just sent, for example, is here. If there was a number of students in that group, then I can have a look at the responses for that particular check-in. As an example, so if I went into a check-in that was sent to this group, it looks exactly like the other screen with the check-ins, the scoring. You can filter it for that check-in. You can analyze that particular check-in, and you can look at the individual students. So if I was to look at this student as an example, again, similar sort of analysis screen, and this is just for one student now. So you can look at that particular student with the same information, the same analysis of how they're feeling, And in terms of conversations with that student and developing relationships, that's really powerful stuff. And then moving along, for the school, there's a support solutions area as well, which is being developed. Most of the stuff in there at the moment is by a guy called Andrew Fuller. He's based at the University of Melbourne and is quite high up in educational psychology. Okay. So we work very closely with him and the University of Oxford, with people there to develop resources and how the system works. And then again, this area, if there was something that you as a school had that you wanted to include, that you wanted your students to have easy access to, that can all be included in this area for you.
Right.
And then groups, which is a very important part. So just to explain, for a school, there's 2 levels of user within a school. So there's a wellbeing leader, and you can have as many of these as you wish, but the wellbeing leaders within the school have full visibility over the whole school. Okay. And then you have a wellbeing facilitator, which might be a form teacher or a year group head or whatever it might be, and they would have visibility over their groups alone. So then you can group your students however you wish, really. So most schools will do year groups, forms, some do boys and girls, some do pupil premium students, free school meal students. You can group as many times as you want, and the student can be a member of as many different groups as you want. So any check-in that particular student does will show in every group that they're a member of. Does that make sense? Yeah. And that's where you can then really start tailoring the questions. You can then really start looking at the detail of each group and comparing it to the whole school and so on. So if I look at the Bristol Massive as an example group, so again, I can look at the same sort of analysis for that particular group. I can see who the facilitators are for that group and add more if I need to. And then I can have a look at the students within that group. So there's a few ways of actually getting into the detail of the whole school, particular groups and the students, but the information is presented in exactly the same way. It's done all for you. So when the teachers get used to looking at this, it actually saves them a lot of time, so they don't have to analyse anything. Yeah. It's all done. It's good. It's brilliant.